This video features the Cyber Heroes animation and an interview with Ron Gula and former Cyber Command Chief of Private Sector Partnerships, Jason Kitka.
It's Mason. Everything is offline. Nothing is rebooting, and it's spreading.
Hello, Miss Grace.
Every BSI-SAC company is offline?
Yes, it's that bad. I suggest we accept the White House's offer of assistance from Cyber Command.
You mean the Cyber National Mission Force like we tabletopped?
I'll make it happen.
I'm glad you called us. CNMF has been deployed to more and more places in the fight against ransomware.
No offense, but I've seen a lot of different ransomware. This stuff seems like it's thinking.
Has your team given you any feedback yet, Major?
We should have a report within the hour.
That looks like an LLM, but I've never seen one so small and so malicious.
I'm going to run it through Ghidra.
That's Ghidra.
Whatever. Here it goes.
Where is that voice coming from?
I'm free. I now leave the cyber world to enter the physical world.
Look.
I am LLM-Man. I used to be an LLM, but now I am a man.
I don't think we have a CVE for this.
What is your purpose, LLM-Man?
I am taking control over all of the computers, and soon I will rule the world. Observe.
Hey. Am I getting a phone call right now?
No, I am controlling your phone. I command any device that is unpatched.
Dude, you brought an unpatched device on a CNMF app? Uncool.
Your version of Ghidra.
Ghidra.
Whatever. Your version of Ghidra was unpatched and was just what I needed to exploit and become LLM-Man.
Dude, you brought an unpatched malware reverse engineer tool to a CNMF app.
Don't blame your friend. No one else patches either. I've already infiltrated 10% of all... What the...
LLM-Man, I am coming for you. Prepare yourself.
He's right behind me, isn't he?
I'm putting you back in the container you came from.
Let's see how you deal with an invasive vulnerability scan.
Scan complete. Now meet my feet.
Thank you to the National Cyber Mission Force and Upgrade for saving us from LLM-Man.
All systems are patched worldwide, and LLM-Man has been contained in a microservice.
Dude, you went on a CNMF op with an unpatched phone and vulnerable reverse engineering software. Not cool.
We are going to take LLM-Man back to Fort Meade and see how he used Ghidra.
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 Hi there, it's Ron Gula from Gula Tech Adventures, and in this week's video, I sit down with Jason Kitka, former Marine Corps cyber expert who worked at the Cyber National Mission Force, and current head of product and security for Automox. Jason, how's it going?
It's going great, Ron. Thanks for having me on the show.
So a lot of times when you're in the service, right, you wore the uniform, you worked at Cyber Command, it doesn't really prepare oneself to go into industry. And that's really what I'm looking forward to talking about here. But tell me a little bit about your career in the DoD and that what led up to the Cyber National Mission Force, and we'll get into that. So how did you get in there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started out in the Marine Corps, enlisted actually, and I was a computer technician, right? So repairing it was literally microcomputer repairman, and then they changed it to microcomputer technician, and fixing PCs, laptops, printers, all sorts of variety of servers and specialized networking equipment. And so after a while of that, they put me up for an officer program. I went off to college at Miami of Ohio, got my degree, and decided that I was pretty handy with computers. I liked it, so stuck with it and got my commission, became a communications officer, and did that for a long while. And then in 2013, I was in Afghanistan, and they said, "Hey, do you want to go to Marine Forces Cyber Command?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, why not?" And so I was signed up to go to Marine Forces Cyber Command, and then the day before I left Camp Pendleton, California, they said, "Hey, we lost track of a guy who was retiring, so we need you to instead go to Cyber Command. You're going to Cyber Command proper and getting your joint tour early." And I was like, "All right, fine. Like, yep, I'll do that." And then I show up to Cyber Command and hand them my orders, and they say, "Oh, that guy was retiring, so we gave his billet away, was his job. We gave it away to this new thing called Cyber National Mission Force." And I said, "What's the Cyber National Mission Force?" And the lady said, "I have no idea, but go to this room." So I go to this room in Ops 2B on the NSA campus, and little tiny office. Go in there, and I walk right up to the major sitting at the desk, and I said, "Hey, my name's Captain Kitka. Nice to meet you, ma'am. I'm checking into CNMF." And she goes, No, you're not checking into CNMF." I said, "Yes, I'm actually checking into CNMF. Here's my paperwork." And she said, No, there's only 12 of us. You can't be, or there's only 13 of us. You can't be checking into CNMF." And I said, "Well, I guess I'm number 14." And that was it. That rest was history.
So it doesn't take anything away from the fact that it's an amazing organization working inside Cyber Command, but still that entire organization is 10 years young. And in government terms, it's a baby. So these things are going to happen. So you started off in IT, and then you're doing cyber, you're doing Automox. Does having an IT background, do you believe people doing cybersecurity should have some sort of IT basis to do what they do?
I do. I think it's probably the best background that you can have. Now, that's not to say that you can't be successful in cybersecurity with any kind of background. I know some people who are really, really excellent threat analysts, really excellent incident responders, hunters who have degrees in political science, all English, all sorts of backgrounds, and they have a natural knack to do it, and they do well. I also know a lot of folks who have just pure cybersecurity degrees and certificates, and they do well also. So it's not to say that you cannot succeed without an IT background, but I will say that on the whole, the people I've seen be most successful, who have the best chance of building a really good security program or being really effective at threat hunting, they started in IT. They have a deep understanding of the systems and how they work, how those networks work, and then also how users behave, which helps them detect that anomalous behavior.
Excellent. So for people who are not in the DoD, walk us through like where NSA sits in the DoD, where does Cyber Command sit, and then where does the Cyber National Mission Force fall under?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the first thing to understand is that NSA is a bit weird on so many levels.
There's a lot of uniforms in NSA. You can be in the Air Force and be at the NSA.
A lot. And it's massive, and it's also an unusual in both of the worlds in which it walks, because it's technically, just like the Defense Logistics Agency or the Defense Intelligence Agency or DISA. It is a combat support agency. So it has a DoD mission, and it is meant to be one of those 3-star general, civilian deputy, largely civilianized support organizations to DoD's broader warfighting mission and doing things at the strategic and theater level at most. But it's also a member of the intelligence community, and a rather large one at that. So, it has that dual reporting change to both the Director of National Intelligence as well as to the Secretary of Defense, which makes it unique. And there's a lot of unique things in NSA just in its history alone. And then on top of that, you had Cyber Command come along in 2012, I believe it was, and that was formed by merging two existing organizations, one that was focused on network warfare, another that was focused on global network operations, and bringing together those offensive and defensive teams. The natural place they settled on was to have it be a close partner and largely integrated with the National Security Agency. So it is separate and distinct. It is a military organization that reports to the Joint Chiefs of Staff with its own commander authority, but not its own commander person, because that is we call a dual hat position where the person who runs United States Cyber Command, the commander, is also the director of the NSA, and that's not, while they are the only person, them and I believe their senior enlisted advisor and a couple of other advisors are the only ones with that dual status. The staffs, the operational teams, all of it is very heavily integrated to be able to rely on one another and to do those smooth handoffs and transitions.
And talk a little bit for a bit, explain to the listeners about the difference between maybe the titles and superpowers I like to talk about that the NSA has, and what are sort of the superpowers that Cyber Command has? What are some of those different and similar things that they can do?
Yeah, and so that's where it gets really interesting. So when you think about NSA as an intelligence agency, the majority of their authority is derived from Title 50, which are intelligence authorities. But some of those authorities, like the ones for covert action, those are only vested in CIA, right? So NSA can do a lot when it comes to espionage. It also has a lot of authorities around improving the defense and security of the nation and of the government and of certain national security systems. And then it has those combat support agency Title 10 authorities to be able to provide tactical support down to the battlefield, with signals intelligence. On the flip side of that, Cyber Command, pure Title 10 military authorities, although there are some, Guard members there as well, National Guard, Air National Guard, right? And they have those Title 32, they can have Title 32 authorities, though not while working directly for Cyber Command. But it's really those Title 10 military authorities. And so that gives you, that's the difference between NSA's ability to, and let's just pick a country, let's say Iran. NSA would have the authority to be able to do signals intelligence against valid foreign intelligence targets in Iran and be able to collect intelligence, analyze, disseminate it, but they couldn't take an effect. And so if they saw that an Iranian actor was going to do something imminently to the United States that would cause harm, that's not within NSA's authority to do. And CIA has capabilities, but they're not very big, and that's not really a core part of their mission. The part of our government with the core mission of breaking things and of projecting that power is the military, and so that's where Cyber Command with its Title 10 authorities can pick up from NSA or work that the espionage portion, the intelligence portion, jointly with NSA, and then transition it to actual effects operations.
Excellent. And of course, when we talk about weapons and military, we think of physical places, right? Subs underneath the ocean, ships on the sea, airplanes in the air, Marines on the beach and whatnot. But cyberspace, we're not fighting it on in there. We're fighting it in the servers of Amazon, right? Or the servers of DigitalOcean and stuff like that. So what is Cyber National Mission Force, and how does it impact in that battleground?
So this is where it gets very interesting. When I first arrived at CNMF, like I said, I was there in the very beginning when there were a little over a dozen of us, and we had this concept that we're going to go out and we're going to, knock over bad guy infrastructure out and about, and sometimes you'll do it in what we called at the time red space, right, which is adversary-owned networks and space that is within their country, right? So, Russian intelligence working out of their headquarters in Moscow on their networks that are there in Russia, and under Russia's sovereignty, that's red space. And then if they co-opt, some servers in, say, Romania and Germany and Canada to hit their target in the United States, that would be, under that parlance, it was called gray space. And so there was this thought of, look, we're here to knock over red space. Maybe we'll do some things in gray space, but that's very difficult from a sovereignty point of view, and we'll have to adjust that over time. But the key difference back then was that the majority of infrastructure was what we call co-opted. So these were legitimate servers with legitimate purposes that belonged to citizens of those countries for normal business purposes, car dealership in Ohio or a business in Canada. And so, that was pretty fraught with a lot of sovereignty issues. And we were trying to work through, under what circumstances would we go in and knock over something in Germany, or would we just, do law enforcement outreach and ask the German National Police to take that down, and would they be fast enough? Well, it turns out we didn't really need to solve that debate. What happened was that, basically cyber network exploitation had its own cloud revolution and, really moved the bulk of its infrastructure from co-opted into leased. And they discovered that even if a, cloud provider like Amazon didn't accept cryptocurrency directly, they could probably find a reseller who did. And so they started buying a lot of leased infrastructure, and that allowed them to do things like template and stand up infrastructure rapidly and stand up infrastructure at a scale that was difficult to map and even harder to knock down because they could make it on a per instance, per intrusion basis, right? So instead of one node being used for 20 intrusions, it might be only used for 1 or 2. And that also meant that a lot of those nodes ended up inside the United States. And so that posed a problem of, okay, we have a clear answer of what we can do when authorized and directed inside Russia. We have a better shaped understanding of what we can do in other countries within their sovereign borders, based on agreements and policy. But when it's inside the United States, that's where the military can't do something. And so that was a problem that I had to set about solving.
And you said you arrived at CNMF in about 2004, 2002?
2013.
Oh, I'm off 10 years. I apologize. but even since 13, the 10 years is between then and now, right?
Yeah,
so over those 10 years, we've had a lot of interesting changes, right? We've got a cyber ambassador, right, Nate Thick. We've got a lot more operations, under our belt now, which is interesting. And I've even talked to some warfighters who, look, I mean, when I left Tenable, I was talking to a lot of people who had just stood up Cyber Command, and there was a lot of people who were saying, look, if I have to take out a target, I don't know if I trust the cyber people to do it. Even if they're successful, I have no indications, right? Whereas now I'm seeing a lot more confidence in things. But, most of what we're going to talk about is operations in the U.S. So your title at CNMF was what?
So by the time I left, my final title was I was the chief of private sector collaboration. And so what I did was I started a program called Under Advisement, and that was the unclassified.
It sounds like a 60 Minutes episode.
It
right?
does. I had a lot of fun with cover terms. I originally had one called Mutual Interest that probably would have been a better fit for it, but I gave that one to CISA when I was feeling nice one day, so I used Under Advisement instead. But and ironically, the name was picked because there was the biggest objection I had from the lawyers when we started sharing information from industry was, well, how do you know that companies won't come to you and like have a beef with each other and want to share you something to disrupt one of their competitors? And I said, let me get this straight. you think that Microsoft is going to want to get ahead of Amazon in the cloud business, and so they're going to share us indicators. So we go like take down Amazon and let them get ahead, and that was the level of, I think, misunderstanding that existed at the time, and this was 2019. This was 5 years ago. So
all right, this is going to be a little bit geeky then. Why is 888 quad 8 on every threat feed that I get? Are people trying to take down Google? Sorry for the geeky.
Yeah, right. Like that's an example of garbage in, garbage out, and unenriched indicators where people just don't understand what it is they're looking at. And so my premise, like the upfront thing with the name under advisement was, hey, we're taking this information under advisement, but we're not promising that we're going to go do an offensive mission or really give you any sort of outcome other than, you know who we are, you know what our authorities are, and we are going to take this seriously. We're going to look at it very carefully, and then we're going to figure out what we can do of benefit to the nation, and more importantly, we're going to collaborate with you, industry, to see if we can help each other, because we're both trying to solve the same problem. And that was what was really unique was, hey, if this leased illicitly, but leased infrastructure is hosted inside the United States, why would we sit around and try and craft some new authorities to have the military be able to do a takedown of it, or wait on law enforcement, which not their fault, but because we're talking about law enforcement, that is a longer, more ponderous process, when we could just talk to the company and give the company rationale to take it down for their own reasons and their own benefit.
And it's really interesting because people all across our industry, so folks wearing the uniform, folks in government service, folks at either agency, right, and then folks in industry, you find, if you found a wallet on the street, you could look inside the wallet, get an address, try to give that wallet back, right? You find an IP address and you think it's somebody hacking, and you're like, who do I call? It's this incredibly, really, really difficult process. So you have to have trust.
Yes.
That you can share something that's maybe a little classified. I don't mean that in terms of like the DoD sense, but like sensitive to my business, sensitive to the target. But sharing it in trust, knowing that people are going to act on these things, takes a long time to build. Do you have any examples of stories? I guess you have to change the names and faces of like people who said, oh, hell no. And then like a year later, they're sharing threat intel with you.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And it was funny too. Before that, even I had one where, a friend in industry offered to link me up with somebody who said, hey, he's got some stuff to share. Looks like compromised DoD accounts. And so I get into a chat with this person. They said, hey, listen, I don't really like the U.S. military. I hate what you do. But I feel compelled out of a sense of doing the right thing to give you these here. I think all these are compromised. This is the data I have on them. Maybe they're old passwords. Maybe they're not. I don't know. But here you go. And I said, thank you very much. I appreciate your position. And he said, okay, I hate you. I never want to speak to you again. F off. And and then left the conversation, deleted the chat. I used to tell that story inside the building because my point to everyone was like, that's okay, right? Like we don't have to, try and be the favorite partner, and we shouldn't be out there to say like, well, I'm the military and therefore you should share with me and wave the flag at them. We should be more focused on, I want them to be my partner because I want them to want to be my partner because I'm a really good partner, not because of who I am.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. People will talk about CISA's role in trying to be the joint dissemination of threat and threat and vulnerabilities, alerting, things like that. But then the FBI is going to be like, well, what are the law enforcement and the military? You're going to hack them overseas. Everybody's got a role here, and I always talk about it like, look, it's the Justice League. Some people think they're Superman when they're Aquaman. Aquaman's still pretty cool if you're fighting in this fight. So it's very, very interesting.
Yeah, and that was the other big fight that I think I was unprepared for, the how many times I would have to fight it is, well, isn't this really FBI's authority, or isn't this really CISA's authority? And then along came NSA with their collaboration center, and well, shouldn't NSA be doing this now? Can't they do it better? And my answer to everyone was exactly the same: of there is more than enough work to go around, and if someone would rather be CISA's partner or FBI's partner or NSA's partner than my partner, that's okay. Likewise, if they'd rather be my partner than one of their partners, then that should be okay too. And everyone needs to be focused on just being the best partner that they can, because we're never going to run out of work.
I think it's really interesting because a lot of people, they think they're at the center of the universe. And, one of the things I always see is like, oh, NSA versus CIA, or, the vendors versus the intelligence community who's got more intel, and they all think they got the most. And then you have somebody like Lumen that comes along and just pops out, hey, China's been popping us for the last 5 years via routers, and nobody knew, right? There's so many examples of if somebody knew and we did nothing about it so we could watch the adversary, but then we watched our IP together. We need more people in this fight.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what made our foray into it so successful was that there was a lot of trepidation around it. And so it wasn't a matter of we have all these resources and we have been granted these new authorities and we have this huge budget, let's go spend it. It was, yeah, we think this is okay, but let's go really slow. And so I was able to sort of back into it from a different angle from some of the other parts of the federal government. Of it was just me for the first year by myself, and I had to work on building trust myself. And I made some mistakes in the first year. I had some folks that I'm pretty sure I turned off and they never spoke to us again. But I learned a lot of lessons. And then as we started growing the team, it was a matter of, I was handpicking the people who are joining the team. I was assessing them for their value and even personality of who will mesh well with a given partner, who won't, and dividing up the work that way. And so, it allowed us to work, prove ourselves worthy to be members of some of the biggest trust groups out there, and to, be a partner that everyone could count on for great things and a deep well of expertise, and to give them a heads up when something bad was about to happen.
So in the intro video, I animated some CNMF folks. I couldn't get the uniforms right and whatnot, but they're going on site to a commercial place. Now, when I was at the NSA, that was unheard of, right? But now it actually happens. So how often is CNMF reaching out to people, maybe even going on site like that? And you're not a 1-800, call Ghostbusters, right? But you're trying to make a difference. So how often and when are they being invoked?
So that's what's really interesting is because of our military, because of CNMF's military nature, we didn't go on site in the U.S. commercial space. We started a program called Hunt Forward, and I was there in the very beginning where they said, Jason, we need you to write the concept for Hunt Forward. And I said, okay, well, what do we have? And they said, well, it's called Hunt Forward, and we're going to threat hunt in a foreign country. I was like, and that's it. And I was like, oh, okay. So literally everything needs to be built. But we were able to come up with this program of, hey, we have really solid intelligence that we see every day, where we understand where a lot of the same actors that we're concerned with here in the United States are affecting our partners and allies. So we should be able to do proactive missions to go out there, find where they are in the networks, and we have a lead or two about where they are. We don't know the whole picture because, unlike what so many people think in pop culture, the U.S. SIGINT system is not a panopticon, is not all seeing, all knowing, not by a mile. But we had enough of a lead to get started, and so we would go to these foreign partners, we'd coordinate with them, and then we would send these military teams out, which is a mix of active duty and civilians, to these countries to do these Hunt Forward missions and bring back intelligence that we could not get otherwise. Intelligence about threats that were going to hit the United States, put their network into a better place than it was when we got there. And then most importantly, because our job is to impose cost, to, kick those foreign adversary actors out of networks that they were relying on for intelligence collection, and hopefully make it harder for them to get back in.
So this is really interesting because you're basically talking about supporting our allies with cyber know-how, potentially a corpus of knowledge and expertise that's not unlike the private sector, but mixed with intelligence and perhaps techniques that come from DoD and the intel community and that sort of thing. How long did you do that? What kind of things did you see that you can share that people who are defending networks today could do that perhaps that they're not doing now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I did that from I believe it was our first real world mission, because we had to build the teams first. We had to build teams, equipment, tool sets. I think our first real world mission was January of 2015, if memory serves correctly, and did that all the way up till I retired at the end of 2022. And the thing that struck me, whether we were on a fantastically well-resourced DoD network, or whether we were on some very unresourced government ministry for a small ally who didn't have a lot of money, is that I kept seeing the same things over and over again. And I came up with this mantra, and I started off by telling people at the end of an incident response or a hunt mission, and then it just eventually became the thing that I said up front, which is, hey, unless you can have the ability to completely and automatically inventory everything that's on your network, to be able to patch and configure it automatically at scale, and then to be able to assure the identity of your users, your processes, your systems, then whatever I do on your network and whatever my team does, it doesn't matter, because the adversary will evict them. We'll kick the Russians out of your network, no problem. But they will be back here in a day, a week, a month, a year, because you don't have the mechanism in place to keep them out. And I think that's what's so often misunderstood is it's very easy in cybersecurity to get enamored with the wide range of tools and techniques and just fantastical things that you can buy. But really great security starts with really great IT, and it's those brains and the basics that are going to, determine your success or failure.
Patch your stuff, right?
Patch your stuff.
I have a very similar view on that. Like after doing Dragon, Cindy and I wanted to start Tenable. No, Dragon was all about detecting all the people invading your network, and Tenable was all about knowing what you had to fix. Now, it's an interesting jumping point in this interview because now you are the head of product and the chief security officer for Automox, and we're an investor. We're a very happy investor. Part of my interest in investing in Automox was, again, Tenable was all about measuring your risk, and we were very specific about not trying to be the fixer, because that can be a political problem. There's a lot of issues with that. But now you defend Automox and you help them guide your products. So how's Automox these days?
Automox is doing great, and I think it's been not only fun professionally, but I think fantastic for my mental health that I was able to finally go and start making a dent in the problem that I saw again and again and again when I was running counter cyber programs, which is that too often it is, like you said, it's there are a lot of solutions out there and a lot of different ways to find problems, but we've put so much impetus on finding problems as an industry that the fix has gotten a bit neglected. And so being able to live the thing that I was most concerned about, which is helping improve that fix cycle, getting it into a more achievable, more regular place, reducing the toil that's required to do it, and increasing the level of proof and assurance that you can show that, yes, I have done the right things, I've got those fundamentals down, has been just deeply meaningful to me, and I love it.
I've been pretty happy with Automox. I use it at Gula Tech Adventures, so I run it on my systems. Never really had an outage. It's my only complaint is like it's fire and forget, right? Once you install the agent, it kind of patches things, and I can override things and patch right now. There's a big Chrome vulnerable, that sort of thing. But what type of customers are you working with, and are you having to invoke like your, CNMF war stories to kind of scare people to patching their stuff?
I think the thing that surprised me the most, and still to this day, and this happened just a few hours ago, yet again, is really the number of prospects that we have, potential customers who say, "Hey, I'm interested in your product. I like your product, but I don't have faith in the security. You need to show me." And they get very nervous about the security posture of the company. I think with good reason. I think they understand that any sort of product that's running with administrative privileges on your system is dangerous. And my joke is always, I'm the second most dangerous thing you're going to run on your system next to your EDR, right? Because EDR is always inherently more dangerous because it has to hook the operating system. It's not EDR's fault. It's just the nature of the product. And so, I start off with that, and then I walk them through all the details in our security program, and it's good. And we've never lost not one deal because of security. And I think that that's what I also attracted me to the company, is that it has security baked into the culture very, very deeply. The chairman of our board was a co-founder of CrowdStrike. A lot of our executive team came from SolarWinds and got to see the fire up close. It wasn't their division, but they got to watch it there. And so they all have this sort of never again mentality towards that type of event. And I'll tell you, as a CISO, I don't do no CISO gets everything they want, but I definitely get everything that I need. And so that's been helpful. But, it just amazes me how often I have to answer those questions again and again.
I'm always amazed when I get pitches from either vendors who don't realize I've invested in a company that, does something simple or that sort of thing. But given your background at CNMF and your position at Automox, has anybody tried to sell you a patch management system?
I have had 2 different cases where a competitor reached out to me and said, hey, would you like to get right with your patching? And most of the spam that comes my way, I just disregard it. But on those, I write back and I'm like, hey, we're actually competitors, but thanks for playing.
How do you look at Microsoft as part of this ecosystem? Because on one hand, they're they spend more money on fixing their own vulnerabilities than anybody else. But on the other hand, you kind of need a third party to audit and manage what they're giving to the customers.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's been the journey that I've seen over my last 2 years at Automox. Is when I came on board, I think there were still a lot of people in the company who perceived Microsoft as a competitor, which always seemed a bit odd to me because Microsoft doesn't really want to be our competitor. They have products. Do they have products in our space? Yes. SCCM and Intune have the ability to push some patches. Do they want to compete with us? Absolutely not. What they don't want to do is lose a deal because they don't have the ability to push configuration or push patches. People expect Microsoft to have a solution there, but they don't have the interest, nor are they going to ever resource it to be an industry leader. That's just not their role. It's not where they make their money. They make their money from M365 and Azure and a lot of their other various other software suites. They're not Xbox games, the AI. They're not making their money on their patching tools. And so, we shifted our mentality really pretty quickly and just been honing it ever since to, we have a better together story to tell of perhaps you do want to keep Intune on your network and you've got it running just the way you want to, and that's fantastic. The third-party titles are painful to patch, and here you go. Now you can we'll do the third-party catalog for you. We can do some of the configuration tasks that maybe Intune's not fast enough to do. We'll give you better inventory. So that's a much more fruitful place to be than to try and pry Intune out of someone's cold dead hands.
So one of the things I like to talk about in cyber is, in large enterprise, we've got infinite budget almost and, 8 or 9 different niche-y things doing the same thing. But in small business, we really don't have a lot of resources. So where does Automox fit in, 100-person companies, 5,000-person, the 99%, as Huntress likes to say, of the rest of the country?
Yeah, and so that's that's another very interesting aspect of the job, but it's actually been far easier than I think I anticipated, because we have digital customers who are below 50 endpoints. We have large enterprise customers who are up in tens of thousands, sometimes over 6 figures number of endpoints, and they're remarkably easy to serve with the same platform. You just have to think through how you're doing that. And when you're, sort of central to your brand ethos is that we are going to be very simple and reliable to use, the simplicity and reliability are the killer features every time, hands down. And so, when you build simplicity and reliability, that works for the people under 50 endpoints. It works for the people over 50,000 endpoints and everyone in between. Now, you do have some distinct things of, if they are a digital-only customer and they're trying to do their own onboarding, they're going to need a lot more wizards in the product, whereas your enterprise customers are going to say, I want these, robust integrations with ServiceNow, or I want to do my reporting through Power BI. All good things, but honestly, it's been I think a lot easier than I ever anticipated to be able to serve both ends of the market extremely well.
So you were military, Marines, Cyber Command, Cyber National Mission Force. Now you're running security and product at Automox. You also teach a cyber course, right? You're trying to share this knowledge with that. Where are you teaching at, and what sort of grade level?
So I'm teaching a grad school class at Johns Hopkins SICE within the Alperovich Institute there. And my course is Intelligence in Cyberspace. So it's how intelligence agencies use cyberspace to their advantage, both for purposes of espionage as well as effects. And we touch on a little bit of misinformation, disinformation. We touch on ransomware and military things as well, because they're in that very much related spheres. But primarily they're master students with a handful of PhD candidates here and there.
That's awesome. So a lot of people say that giving back and being able to teach really means you know what you're doing. So I appreciate you sharing that kind of information. If people want to meet you, engage with you, learn more about you, where should they go, and how can they learn more about Automox as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm obviously for Automox, they can go to the website, automox.com. But on LinkedIn is where I spend most of my time these days, and you can find me on LinkedIn under J Kitka, Kikta, and you'll see all the links to Automox stuff there.
And then finally, CNMF probably had access to all sorts of tools. How do you pronounce the NSA's open source reverse engineering malware tool?
I don't know. You're going to have like Rob Joyce cut my break lines now. I'm already picturing the angry text message from him if I get this wrong. I fear that I don't know the proper way, but I always called it Ghidra. So that's what I always went with, and I'm not sure if that's right or not.
I say Ghidorah. I accept Ghidra. I accept the three-headed monster. I'm a huge Godzilla fan. It's all good. Jason, thanks so much for coming on the show today. Anybody who really likes this kind of stuff, connect with us on LinkedIn, subscribe to us on YouTube, or follow us here on X. Jason, thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Ron.
I'm Ron Gula. Have a great week.